any of the things that he did, could not accomplish any of the things that he accomplished, because, like Pepe said, she was the rock.
My mother and my father met when they were real young. There were kids in the block. And I remember my father telling us that the first time he saw my mother, when she was a young girl, he said, that girl's gonna be my wife. I'm gonna marry her. So the love started real early in their lives.
When my father was a young man, the way he got started in the army, the Cuban government would go into the neighborhoods and give a test to see if they could find candidates to go to the military academy. So my dad took that test and aced it. While in the academy, just like they do here in West Point, get assigned to a military unit for that summer. So they get accustomed to being in an active unit. My dad was able to go on a naval anti-submarine mission during World War II, so that makes him a World War II veteran. The Cuban Navy at that time had become very famous because they had one of the best anti-submarine boats. The efficiency of killing German submarines was very good. So all the shipping that was coming through the Panama Canal around and were going to Germany or coming from the East Coast of the United States, they all wanted the Cuban Navy to escort them as long as they could, because they were so good at killing submarines. So my father was able to be on one of those anti-submarine boats as a cadet, so that was pretty good. When he graduated as a second lieutenant, called the Rural Guard. My father got stationed in the eastern part of the country, called Orihuela, and he was there for a year. And his duty was to patrol, I don't know, hundreds of square miles in the mountains, in the jungles. And he had a small office in this little town, and there was a sergeant with him, a corporal, and a private. So they would go out on these home patrols. A couple of stories that he told me about his adventure there. One was about a Baptist preacher. Most people are Catholic, so the poor Baptist guy, he wasn't doing really well. He was actually stealing chickens, eggs, whatever he could to survive. And so the people wanted to hang him, got their basically staked his life because they were going to string him up. Dad gave him some money and got him on the horse and got him out of town. The next story is my favorite story. In his office, as you've seen, like if you go into the post office, they'll have pictures of wanted men. There was a man there, I don't know his name, so we're going to call him Mr. X. And he was wanted for murder, for manslaughter, rape, and robbery, a bunch of stuff. Dangerous man. So he's out on one of those patrols, and he tells his corporal to take the horses, take it to the station. He walks to the train station, he gets up on the boardwalk and walking. The train is there, people are loading up the train, And he looks down the train, and at the very end, the very fourth train, he sees Mr. X, a wanted man. He looks at him, he sees that Mr. X gets on the train, so he gets in the train, and the train takes off. Now, Mr. X did not see him, but he saw Mr. X. He starts going from car to car to car to car, because he was in the very forward car. Of course, he's saying, I don't know what I'm going to do, I have to arrest him. When he gets to the last car, you can see through the glass window, you can see him sitting. He opened the door, Mr. X took a look at him, he pulled out an old peacemaker and started firing. Bam! Bam! Started firing my dad. My dad pulls out his 1911 45 and put 2 slugs in the chest. Boom, boom, killed him dead right there. That's pretty damn impressive, man. When he finished his duty as a rural guard, he went back to Havana, and then the Army sent him as a second lieutenant. They sent him to the United States, to Fort Bliss, and several other places for advanced artillery studies and the War College. And that tells me, and I never figured this out until not too long ago, that he already had to have a mastery of English. So he had to learn English while he was going to the academy. He spent a year in the United States. And then when he came back to Cuba, that's when they got married, when Mommy and Bobby got married. He gets his first command, an artillery company. And for those of you who've been in the military, you understand when a new commander comes in, they inspect everything. So he is going around inspecting everything, and they get to the stables. And he finds this private. He's tore up, he's all tore up. All messed up, uniform messed up. And he tries to find out why is this guy like this? And they find out that they were using this guy for doing errands, for fixing houses. They were just using him to death. I don't know his name, but we're going to use the name Gutierrez. Private Gutierrez. You remember that name? And so he finds this out. My dad reaches in his wallet, pulls out all the money he had in his wallet, gives it to Private Gutierrez, says, go home, take a leave, go see your wife, or buy her a dress. Stay over there, get the leave. Just go home and then come back to show the kind of man that Bobby was. To do a demonstration for the United States Army, an artillery demonstration. And there was a congressman there, Batista was there, there was all the high brass of the United States Army there. Batista was the president of Cuba at the time, but he was a dictator. Okay? Batista was like a mafioso. A lot of the positions in the army, like generals and high brass, were just friends of his or cousins of his, where he would make somebody, we'll make you general, you take care of me, I take care of you. There was that kind of corruption, okay? So that's the reason when he took over that company, it was in such disarray. They're going to give a demonstration to the United States Army to show, what they can do. So there's all kinds of brass there, the high command, there's generals in there. So my dad goes out there and he gets all these different artillery units from Cuba, coming from different parts of Cuba, to show what they can do. And my dad's expertise with artillery was such that the American military, the congressmen, everybody, they could not believe that this little Cuban officer could do so well with artillery. They should not believe it. So of course Batista sitting there, he gets his chest all, proud. That's one of my men. That's one of my men. He wants to meet him, so he brings him over, meets him. He wants to see who this guy is. There's a mystery. We don't know exactly what happened, but somehow, and I think it had to do with that demonstration that was so impressive to Batista and everybody else. Batista offered Papi to be his personal bodyguard. My dad refused it. He did not want to do that job. We don't know why, Batista gave him a ring that had his name and Papi's name engraved. I don't know why exactly he gave it to him. The only thing we can figure is it had to do directly with that demonstration and the fact that he was so impressed with him, and the fact that the American staff was so impressed with him that he wanted to bring him close to him. Now he's a major. When he becomes a major, he now becomes the director of mathematics and artillery studies at the military academy. And the government gets more and more corrupt. He gets involved with 13 other officers to try to knock out Batista, take him out, and take over the government. Now the plan was to do a military strike, take over the government, martial law, while they do an emergency election, and hand the government back to the civilian authority. That was the plan. Officers involved were all so professional, and they took their oath of office seriously, to the point that conspiracy was called the conspiracy of the pure. No bad marks on them at all. Now she understands that when they're about to make a move that could cost him his life, all this is happening, everything. And she's with him 100%, no questions, nothing. 100%. Why? Because she knew the kind of man he was, and that he would not do anything that was unlawful. He would not do anything that was unlawful. Making a strike like that is lawful, because when you take an oath, we all took the oath, we all took the oath, to uphold and defend the Constitution. That means that when the government is violating that Constitution, it's actually our duty to knock them out, take them out. So that's what he set out to do, the day before the strike. A couple of the officers involved ratted him out. They ratted him out. So that night, they were all arrested. Every single one. They came in, busted the door, and they arrested each and every one. Cardona, which was the Minister of Justice in Cuba. He was also a professor of law in the University of Havana. This man defended my father in his court-martial and basically saved his life. So instead of being shot, they put him in prison in an island called the Isle of Pines, which is south of Cuba. 2 times we went to visit him. First time that I got on a plane, it was a DC-3. Anybody know what DC-3 is? It's an old prop job. First time I went on a plane was to go visit him. First time I ever got on a ship was to go visit him. Now he's in prison. He's sentenced to 6 years in prison. During all this time, Castro is in the mountains. Castro is trying to do his revolution in the mountains. And the population becoming more and more enraged with Batista. And now they're wanting Castro. Everything but Batista. Get Batista out of here. So a lot of them are wanting Castro to come in. So Batista's getting a lot of pressure. 1959. 2 years day, Batista gets on a plane, loaded up with cash, and poof, he leaves the country for good. Just leave. When that happens, an order is written. We don't know who or how, but no, the order was written to release my father and the group of officers. And the 2 main ones were my father and another colonel named Barquin. With orders to go and take over the command of the Cuban army. So now they get on I don't know how they got with probably a plane. They flew to Havana. They go to the equivalent to the Pentagon. The equivalent to the Pentagon. And my dad is still in his striped uniform. And he's being escorted by armed troops. He's walking up these long steps. I was thinking that day that he said, when I get to the top of those stairs, I may be a dead man. Walks down the hall, goes into the office of the general of the army. Hand over your weapon. Now this general, remember, is one of Batista's clones. It's just one guy that was put in there. So the general takes his gun out, hands it to my dad. Now, listen to this. This guy was a Batista guy. So my dad knew that the moment that he released him, kill him. So he told his escort, saying, I want you to take this man home safely to his family. Safely to his family. See, so he wanted to make sure that he was protected. Right? So in other words, Papi was not a thug in any kind, in any way. Not a thug. He asked for a uniform, so they bring him a uniform. So now he's in charge of the army, and Barquin is and the other guy is somewhere else doing the same thing somewhere else. We don't know that part. General of the Cuban Air Force comes into my dad's office, where my dad is now, and he tells my dad, I have a squadron of F-58s loaded. Castro is coming down the Avenida Real, which is the Royal Avenue. It's a long, I wish I would have had a map of Cuba. It's a long island, and there's an avenue that crosses right in the middle of the island, from one end to the other. So Castro is coming on that avenue, and a lot of the army units are now joined them. So now they're riding on tanks in the open, right? They're heading to Havana, slowly, yelling and screaming, hey, we're winning, right? And the general of the Air Force tells my dad, now, we can take them out in 15 minutes. They're out in the open. Perfect targets. And my dad says to the general, look out the window, what do you see? What are the people yelling for? What are the people asking for? They're asking for Castro. Who are we to take that away from them? Who are we to take what they want? Castro was actually the one who first got to Havana. Was not Castro, was Che Guevara. Che Guevara and Camilo Cienfuegos, two of the rebel leaders. Che Guevara and Camilo Cienfuegos were the first ones to take Havana. When they got into Havana, they said, "Who's in charge?" It was my dad and Barquin, both of them. So they were the ones that were there to allow them to come into Havana. And finally, Castro comes in. He sees that it's a total disaster, disorganized disaster. He splits the island in two, gives my dad one half of the island, and gives the other guy, Barquin, the other half of the island. And they're to reorganize the Cuban army. They each take a half, and they start going from the military fort to another to reorganize. The way they did it was they would go to a military installation and they would identify the people that they either know before that were professionals, and they would put them in charge, fire everybody else, put them in charge, right? And delegate authority, and then they'd go to the next one. In the meantime, they were making a report of all the things that need to be replaced, equipment, everything else. So then they show up, and this was about 6 months. So then he comes back, this is still 1959. A lot of things happened in 1 year, 1959. So they come back with their mission done, with a report to Castro, tell them we need this, we need this, we need this, radios, we need artillery pieces, whatever, everything that they needed, munitions. So Castro said, "Okay, good. I'm gonna send both of you to Europe." And that means that Castro was not a communist. He was not to send them to Europe. He was going to send them to China or to Russia. So he sent my dad and this other guy to Europe to buy munitions, equipment, like a Foot Locker, full of cash, millions and millions of dollars in cash. And he took this to Europe, and they went to Spain and Italy and Germany. While they were in Italy, he met an ex-Italian general that actually fought alongside Rommel. You know, remember who Rommel is? And it's okay. And he told my dad, "You know, it's customary for people in your position to skim off the top a few $1 million. You got millions and millions and millions and millions. You skim off $3 or $4 million, put it in the bank, Swiss bank account, forget about it." And my dad said, "That ain't my money. It's the Cuban people working. I'm not doing it." I remember Mommy telling me this story that she was mad at him. Because she said, "He's so honest, I can't stand it." But, of course, that would have changed everything if he would have done that. But he didn't. And I'm glad he did. Because, you know, he wouldn't have, if he would have done it, he would have never been able to live with himself.
My name is Jose Antonio Orihuela. I was born in 1951 in Havana, Cuba. I am the oldest son in the family. My father, of course, is the one we're talking about in this story. In April 1956, my father was sentenced, along with another 11 officers, for overthrowing the government, mainly the president of Cuba, Batista. He was sentenced to 6 years. They took him and the officers to the prison in Isle of Pines, South Cuba. There, They took all his clothing, and they took all his personal items, and gave him the uniform for the prison. One of the items that they took from him was a ring that was given to him by the president of Cuba 3 years prior. One of the items, the ring that was taken away from him, the warden, his name was Blanco Rico, was a friend of his. And he put it to the side, put it inside of a desk drawer, and told him that he would try to keep it safe. The ring itself is very unique, has a complete unique story on its own. One of the things that he had to endure at the beginning of his prison term, he was put in on a underground insulated cell, very small, no more than 5 by 5 room, no light, all darkness. And the only access to that room was to the top, where they would drop a bucket with the food and water, and also get rid of all the waste. He stayed there for a month, never seen the light. And he could feel the roaches crawling on him at night. And even though all his life he couldn't stand roaches. So that's sort of the things that he had to go through to endure this part of his, endure his life. Of course, he only there 1 month. Once he got out of the cell, he couldn't see for a day and a half because the light blinded him. It was so bad.
He comes back from his mission in Europe, and each one of the Barquin and him bring a ship full of stuff. Each one has a ship full of stuff. I know he mentioned he bought some French artillery pieces. I think he bought some Centurion tanks, munitions, all kinds of stuff. So they come back to Cuba, to Havana. The moment he gets off the ship, one of his colleagues that went to school with him told him, hey, listen, man, while you were gone, first of all, look around. And then he noticed that there's Russian officers amongst them. When he left, there was no such thing. There was no such thing. When he comes back, also there's Russians, and his friend said, they don't look good, man. They're talking to the Russians. And then he said also, he told him some of the people that he knew were talking bad about him to Castro. The moment that he saw that, he took heed of what his friend told him, and he did the smart thing. He went into the lead. To the normal, to do the assignment. I haven't seen my children for a year, 6 months. So he takes the lead, goes home, and immediately tells Mommy, pack your stuff, and you're getting out of here. And we ship you out of here. Just so happens that we had a grandmother and a step-granddad that lived in Puerto Rico. It would look normal for us to go to Puerto Rico to visit our grandparents. Also, it was still very early after the revolution. There was a lot of confusion. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. So it was a perfect time to ship us out. So we go to Puerto Rico. So that was us three, and the moment that we get there, she gets on the phone and calls Poppy and tells her, we're here. But Poppy goes and resigns his commission. Well, you know you don't quit the mafia. And immediately, he's put under house arrest. Now, listen to this very carefully. And it says, okay, I want you to get a group of people. So one of the officers goes and finds a sergeant and says, Sergeant Gutierrez, get a detail of 4 men and take this man to his house. He's under house arrest. Remember the name Gutierrez?
Mm-hmm.
The same man that he was a little private, that had helped him years before, that he was getting abused. He was put in charge of my father's house arrest. That's amazing. That's the hand of God right there. They go to his house, and this now, a sergeant, the little private made some of himself after that. Became a sergeant. Now he's in charge of the detail to keep him in the house. So of course, he helped him. He said, okay, no, Comandante, no, we're going to get you out of here. So the sergeant hands him his 45, 2 extra magazines, and tells my dad, we got to make this look good, because if we don't, I'm going to get shot. So they tied up all the other 4 men. My dad took me, went and blam! I don't know if you guys know, but back then, you know, in Cuba, we had TV, just like in the United States, TV and J Modern in the United States. So my dad's picture was in the TV, in the newspaper. They wanted him dead or alive. They wanted him actually dead. So he is hiding out. He starts to go to these houses of people that he thought were his friends. And house to house, he would go to people that he thought were friends of his. No, I don't want no trouble. You got to leave. You got to leave. He go to another one. No, not here. So finally he found 2 different families who he never thought were that close to him. And those 2 families risked their lives. And he would hide in one house for a little while, then go to the other house for a little while. And he kept doing that while he formulated a plan to escape. Have in mind that when Poppy sent us to Puerto Rico, he knew that there was a good chance that was it. That there was, he was going to be dead. So now he's formulating a plan to get out. He contacted some people, said, if you go to this beach, this particular beach, at a certain time of night, you need to swim out a couple 100 yards and just tread water and wait there, and somebody's gonna pick you up. So he goes out to the beach one night and swims out. By the way, he was an excellent swimmer. He goes out and he's treading water one night, 2 nights. Then he started seeing these fins, you know. And so he said, no, I'm gonna go out there with the sharks. So after about the 3rd night, he said, I'm not doing this anymore because I'm not gonna make it. I'm just gonna be shark bait, you know. So he stopped doing that, tried to formulate another plan, and he finds another person who told him that there was a captain of a trawler, a fishing trawler, that was trying to get people out of Cuba. You know, you have to pay the money. But you have to take a train to get there. And he takes the train. And when he's on this train, one of the officers of the secret police that he knew and who knew him was in the same train. He's armed and he knew that this would be it. Because they're not taking you alive. So anyway, he was able to hide with this guy in the train. He gets to the port and goes to the trawler where the captain was waiting for him. And there was about 3 other military officers that were also trying to escape Cuba. The captain will tell this guy, you get into this hole and you get over here. And my dad, they had a harpoon box. They took a harpoon box, opened it up, and put my dad in the harpoon box and nailed it shut, and stuck it under the deck. And the trawler prints out, harpoon box cannot move, blackness, cannot move, and get seasick, cannot move. So he said, well, I may drown with my own vomit. I'm not gonna be able to stand it long. And then he actually says a prayer. Says a prayer that, Lord, I'm yours. And then all of a sudden he says that his seasickness went away completely. Just about that time, a Cuban patrol boat stops the trawler. He could hear through the deck. And he could hear when they boarded it. They boarded the trawler looking for contraband. And of course, what could you do? You know, they didn't find anything. He got away. So they delivered him right at where the international waters begin. And an American Coast Guard cutter picks all the officers. Picks them up, takes them to Key West. Key West, the CIA is waiting. They knew who he was because because of the position that he had held. So the CIA is waiting on him, and they put him in a hotel room. They took care of him for 3 days, 3 nights, and they debriefed him. They wanted to find out what was happening in Cuba, what was the conditions, because they were talking about the Bay of Pigs invasion. They debriefed him for 3 days, and he didn't give them the answers that they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear, yes, because here's what they had: a map of Cuba in the room, and they said, okay, what do you think would happen if we put 800 men or 1,000 men over here and we basically think the Cuban people will revolt? And my father said, no. Cuban people are scared They're not going to revolt. So anyway, he did not give them the answer that they wanted to hear. So they let him go. Now, we're in Puerto Rico this time. He goes to Miami and reports to the same guy that defended him in the court-martial, a guy named Miró Cardona. This guy, his uncle, is supposed to be the president of Cuba once they take Cuba over. They had formulated a plan. All these Cubans in exile formed an invasion force. They were training in different parts, Guatemala. There's some camps in Puerto Rico, some camps in Texas. They were formulating a plan to invade Cuba, and in hopes that they could take it over again. The idea was that they would establish a beachhead that they could control, and then Miró Cardona and his staff would go to the beachhead, declare sovereignty, and ask for help from the United States. That was their plan. So Miró Cardona asked my dad to join the invasion. And my dad basically said, well, first I gotta see what you got. I'm not gonna just jump in here. Miró Cardona asked, okay, well, go out and do an inspection, see what you think. So the first thing he did is he looked at their plan, and he traveled to a couple of the camps, and he came back to Miró Cardona and told him, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. You're depending on the CIA. You're depending on the Navy. You're depending on the Marines. You can't do it like that. You have to be able to go in there on your own and take the island on your own. But you can't do it like that. I'm not part of it. I'm not here to commit suicide. Refuse that. And then he finally joined us in Puerto Rico. We were in Puerto Rico for just what, 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, most. Yeah.
And my grandfather, my step-grandfather, was that in fact? They sold the factories they had in Puerto Rico. And they bought a huge plant. I remember how big that thing was in Jamaica. So now we all moved to Kingston, Jamaica. That's where we learned how to speak English, by the way. So we moved to Kingston, Jamaica, and we were there for 2 years, working the factory. And this step-grandfather, his name was Julian. He was a gambler, a drinker, step-granddad. He had his good parts. I mean, but one night, drunk, gets to gambling, and he gambled away the whole factory.
Wow.
So all of a sudden now, my parents, we didn't know, we were just kids, we just having fun, we didn't care, we didn't know. But my parents, now all of a sudden, they're in a strange country, we still in exile, So now, they have to wait for a visa so they can return to Puerto Rico. Because the idea is to go back to Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico is the United States. And if, once we get to Puerto Rico, then they can begin their path to citizenship. Got the visa, went to Puerto Rico, and we became American family. That was my father's dream to start an American family, and he did it.
Well, in 1959, after the revolution, when my father escaped, none of the prisoners had an opportunity to get their belongings. There's a speculation that the warden, Blanco Rico, was assassinated. And therefore, his mother kept the ring. My father ended up going to Puerto Rico, and then Jamaica, and then back to Puerto Rico. Then we came to the United States. And while we were here, they had visited California, where there was visiting some relatives for my mother. And the mother of the warden learned of my father's coming to California, and she arranged a meeting with him. When he came with my mother to see her, she said, I got something that I've had for me for 30 years, and you need it back. Excuse me for being a little sentimental here, but she revealed the ring to him, the gold ring that she had kept for almost 30 years. And he was totally amazed at what she had done. Now let me give you what the ring looked like. It's engraved from both. It's engraved on both sides. It's got my father's initial on one side, and FB is the initials of the president of Cuba, Fulgencio Batista.
They got their residency, their green cards. We all got our green cards. But even then, when we got to Puerto Rico, this part, talking about a strong woman. When we got to Puerto Rico, remember, we had nothing. Everything was lost. So they got to Puerto Rico with only whatever they had in their bags. That's it. That's all they had. So, just enough cash to rent a little broken down little apartment. Not that money. And so my dad goes out and starts to find a job. He's trying to find a job. And the food runs out. The food runs out. So whatever food was in the house, my mom had to keep from my dad so that he would have the energy to continue to look for a job. So she was feeding us sugar water. Sugar water. Could you imagine what a mother would feel having to do that to their children? That's tough. That's tough. So even in Puerto Rico, they had to go through that. Start from scratch. And then, because of my dad's mathematical, his brain, the man had a brain that I wish I had just an eighth of his brain. Man. because of his mathematical expertise, he would get hired somewhere and figure out, they were doing a project or something, and he looked at it and go, he made a suggestion, and go, what? You're hired as an engineer. Come here. That kind of stuff. And he just, that's who, he was just like that. So, little by little, move on. We started doing a lot better in Puerto Rico. And then the economy in Puerto Rico tanked. It tanked. So now, they got to start all over. So then we decided we're going to go to the mainland. Here, we're going to go to the mainland. So they decide, my dad takes me with him to New York, and he leaves the rest of the family in Puerto Rico. Goes to New York to see if he can land a good job, and they bring the rest of the family. So we go to New York. I remember the first time I had seen snow. Wow. So we were living in New York with my godfather, black. And he decides that he can't be having a kid tagging along. He said, I'm just getting in her way. So he sent me to Atlanta, to the other part of the family, my mom's side of the family that's living in Atlanta. So I come out, now the family's completely splintered. I'm in Atlanta, Poppy's in New York, the rest of the family is Puerto Rico. While I'm in Atlanta, he finally finds a job and moved to New Jersey. New Jersey, just across the river. And he brings the rest of the family to New Jersey. And I finished my school year in Atlanta, in Decatur, Georgia, by the way. And then we all get together, and the family's back together in New Jersey. Starting again from scratch. While we're in New Jersey, there's a big Cuban community in New Jersey. So my dad gets a job because, you're Cuban, you have to get a job. So what happens, as soon as they find out that he was a major in the army, and they start saying, well, were you with Castro or with Batista? What were you? So all of a sudden, hate. So they would start slashing his tires. They just started. So he had to leave that job and go to another job. Same thing again, go to another job. Same thing again. So he had to get away from the Cubans. He had to get away from the Cubans because they're full of hate. So we had to leave New Jersey and start again, come to Atlanta and start again. So when we get to Atlanta, we started again. But that was the end of the starting again, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, that was the end.
He loved his wife all his life. He only had eyes for her. And of course, she was also a rock. And even though we went through a lot of trials and tribulations, they did mainly. They had one thing in mind, just to preserve the family all the way. And I wish people would understand how good it is to have a mother and a father like we did.
My mother's grandfather was a Spaniard. My mother's father was a Spaniard. My father's mother was a Spaniard that came to Cuba right after the Spanish-American War as a child. And my father's father was also Spaniard. So our lineage is almost originally from Spain. So here we have first generation, second generation, and third generation American, correct? That was my father's dream, to start an American family, and he did it. Well, now you know where he comes from. This is a special story because it's our story. It's our story. You know? It doesn't make us better than anybody else. Everybody has a story. Many other Cubans have had same story or story. They don't have to be Cubans. It could be anybody. So if this story doesn't make us the better, but it is our story.
And, yeah, no, Damien, I just wanted to ask you a quick question because I'm doing an interview for yeah, for Kimberly's thing for Poppy. Anyway, listen, do you recall that when Poppy was in the prison, didn't he say something about he was locked in a cage or a box or something?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought, because he didn't like roaches very much, did he?
Huh?
He did not like roaches very much.
No, he had the story about the roaches.
That's right. Right. An in-ground insulation cell. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inside the ground, and it was very small.
Right. Yeah. I think he said it was about 4x4 or something like that.
Yeah, it was very, very small, very uncomfortable. So you have to basically lay on the floor.
Yeah.
The only light came in when they opened the hatch from the top.
Right. Yeah. To feed them and stuff.
To feed them.
Yeah.
And they would feed them. If I remember a place we used to go. I don't know if it's the same farm. I remember the farm we used to go, occasionally, and that's where I got chased by a bull.
Well, that's where the sugar cane factory was, or the plant.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was Miró's.
Family there.
Miró from Cardona's family was there.
Oh, it was Miró Cardona.
Yes.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I was too little.
Right.
Okay, but now there was another place we used to go where we used to hunt it for tarantulas. Remember?
Yeah, but yeah, that was that in like a banya, or was that in
No, that
No.
was somebody in their house.
Yeah, right.
I remember we went maybe more than once, but the kid that lived there, don't remember if it was family or not, taught us how he caught.
Yeah.
What was his name? Was those huge spiders, bird spiders.
Yeah, we used to tie the lizards in the string and put it in the holes and drag them out, right?
And then, but then the procedures, you had to catch a bunch of lizards first.
Right, that's correct. Right. I remember
And
that.
then when the lizard prisons come in, I remember.
Yeah, I remember that now.
There's
Yeah.
prisons on the side of this, like a cutaway in the back of his house.
Yeah, I just don't remember exactly the house.
We built cells into the earth.
Right.
Put little big set of bars, and we imprisoned the lizards.
Right.